this video we're going to be understanding named ranges. So what is a named range? In its simplest form, it's just where we take a standard cell reference. So for example, here we have cell H5, and instead of using the default name that Excel provides, we use our own custom name. We give that range, either a cell or a group of cells, we give that range a name. So let's see how we can do that. In one of the previous videos we looked at how I might want to add a sales tax, and I did that by having a locked cell with a sales tax value that's found up here in A1. That means that I can fill down my formula, and if at any point I want to update the sales tax value, I don't have to go through every formula. I can simply just update it in one central place. Well, that is absolutely fine and it's effective. The only perhaps issue with this formula is it's not very expressive. If I just look at the syntax and click into the cell, follow the references and look at where everything's pointing, I can understand it. But I have to apply some common sense and find out where those references are pointing. It would be better, preferable for us, if this formula was a lot clearer. So let's say, for example, instead of saying A1, this actually just said sales tax. That would make it very easy for us to understand what is being calculated. So to change this A1 reference to a sales tax word, I go to the cell that I'm interested in, and I'm going to start off with a simple shortcut. This will work 9 times out of 10 unless you need to do something a bit more complex. And where I have my cell reference in this top corner here, I'm going to simply select it, effectively about to overwrite it, and then I'm going to type over the top sales tax. Now it is very important that you don't leave any spaces or add any special characters into this name. The name must be one word, no spaces. When I'm done creating the name, I have to press enter to make that a permanent feature. You'll now see that where column B or cell B1 is interpreted by Excel as B1, when I select my sales tax cell, it now says sales tax. Okay, let's see how this pans out in our formula. As it is, Excel will not automatically update any existing cell references. So we're going to have to tell Excel to recreate that formula. I'm going to highlight my cell A1 and I'm going to click over my newly named cell. Excel now correctly interprets this as the sales tax cell. Now it's important to know that the cell A1 is still A1. It will never stop being A1. We cannot confuse Excel. What we've done is put a label over the top of cell A1. Once I've finished with that formula update, I can press enter. My formula value remains the same as it should, and I can fill that value down. As you can see, the numbers are unchanged, and any one of my given cells will still be pointing at the sales tax cell. So that is the basics of creating named ranges, but let's go a little bit further. So to look at my named ranges, I can enter the name manager. This tool is going to allow me to do any kind of operations to do with named ranges. Click on name manager and then I see this dialog box here presenting me with different options. As you can see, we find the name range I just created called sales tax. From here I can see its name is sales tax, its value is 0.1, and that it refers to cell on sheet data, cell A1. And the scope is within the workbook. When we go to create another name range, we'll understand more about scope. Okay, let's leave the name manager for a second and go back to our formula to look at a real life scenario. In this situation, I have my sales tax calculation, which is multiplying G6 by sales tax. That's relatively simple for me to understand, but in fact, I may actually want to substitute G6 for sales, perhaps. And then my formula will be super intuitive. It will just say sales times sales tax. I will know instantly what the result should be. But in the previous method, when I named my cell, it used absolute referencing. So it was always locked to cell A1. What I need is some sort of relative referencing. Let's return to the name manager. I'm going to create a new name. And this name is going to be, in this situation, just sales. Remember, I cannot add any spaces or special characters, so keep this name simple. Now, the scope of my named range tells Excel where I want to be able to use this named range. By default, it is applied to the workbook. That means anytime I want to reference this named range, I can access it. That be on sheet data or sheet assumptions or any other sheet that I create. For my purposes in this situation, I'm actually going to limit the scope to just the data sheet. I don't want this name range to be detected on other pages. At this stage, I can also add some comments. If this was a particularly complex named range, I might want to add some information such as this is the sales column. Now I've given my named range a name, a scope, and some comments. I now need to specify where to find this named range. So I'm going to click on my little blue and red arrow box, find the data that I'm interested in, which is total sales, and I'm going to start with the first row of interest. In this case, G6. Now, if I was to leave my reference as is, it would be an absolute reference to G6. No matter where I am in the workbook, it would always point at G6. What I'd be interested in is a situation where it always looks at the total sales column, but it will look at the appropriate row as I move through the worksheet. So I would like to lock the column, but I will unlock the row by deleting the $ in front of the row number. Let's just do a quick check. Good, name, scope, comments, and click OK. My new named range has been created and I can see it in the name manager. Let's close the name manager and put this new named range into practice. So my sales tax is already in place, pointing at cell A1 and always will point at cell A1. But now I want to replace G6 with my new named range, which was simply sales. And you'll notice as I start to type sales, Excel tries to auto-complete that for me. I can pick from either sales or sales tax. The one I want, of course, is sales. So I can use the tab to auto-complete. Fantastic. So looking at my new formula, I can see that sales is pointing to row 7. I actually want my sales named range to point to row 6. So I'm going to have to go into the name manager and modify my named range. I'll click out of the cell, go to my named manager. Now, if I want to edit any of the properties of my named range, I will need to use the edit key. But if I just want to change the reference, I can simply go directly to this refers to box. Okay, I'm going to update this reference, but it's important to understand that when you use a relative reference in Excel, it will be relative to the cell that you currently have selected on the worksheet. So at the moment I'm on row 6. My relative reference, if I want it to be on the same line, needs to also point to row 6. In this situation, I've selected row 6 and my relative reference is pointing to row 6. If I wanted it relative to row 1, I would need to select row 1 and make my relative reference point to row 1. From here, I've updated the reference, the refers to part of the formula. To confirm this change, I'll click on this little tick. We'll see my refers to has now been updated within the name manager, and I'm ready to finish. Click and close. Let's go and check out the formula. Click into the formula bar and see that in this situation, it is now correctly highlighting the sales row, and sales tax is still permanently fixed on that A1 cell. Let's fill the formula down and just confirm everything's working. Looks good so far. Let's click into some of these cells. So we can see that sales tax is now still anchored into A1, but my total sales column is moving relative to whatever row I am in. So that is the use of named ranges and the name manager. We have various other shortcuts within this section. We can use the define name shortcut to create a name quickly. We can add our named ranges into formulas using this button, or create a new named range from the current selection. But all of this functionality is ultimately available through the name manager. And just to recap, Named ranges is just an excellent way to make your formulas more expressive. How much better is this, sales times sales tax, than my original formula that simply read G6 times A1? That concludes our chapter on named ranges.